I would like to mention one word that can describe Chris Daykin. I think he is the most selfless actuary I ever met. This is very important when we say that, because a person, and most of you are actuaries now, and they're going to be great actuaries in the future, but unfortunately, not everybody, I can say, is selfless, where they give from themselves to the benefit of others. Chris, I can say he is selfless. I have known Chris since 1988. I have worked with Chris since 1993, 1991. And I can tell you, if I speak on behalf of the thousands of actuaries that know Chris, they all would say the same thing about Chris Daykin. So we are very lucky today. Although Chris is a retired actuary, he's dedicated his time for the education in the profession and helping you out. And one thing I would like to mention, all of you have graduated from universities. All of you, or most of you, are great, but none of you really differentiate between the university education and being part of the profession. This is a course which will highlight for you what is really the actuarial profession all about, and what is your duty, whether you are an employee or a consulting actuary or anything within the actuarial world, what is your duty as a professional. So I'm going to leave the floor to Chris.
Good afternoon, Lebanon, and great to be with you. I hope you... And I can see the auditorium with all of you in, and a few people online as well. So, as Ibrahim mentioned, the professionalism course usually runs for a full day, and in the old days we used to run 2-day courses quite often, with more case studies and with videos and more discussion. But the most important thing really is that you get to engage with the course, and the discussion of the case studies is perhaps the most important aspect of it. So I think just to introduce what we're going to do, the purpose of this course is to enable you to think about professional matters as opposed to technical matters. There's no technical content really in this course, other than sort of peripheral to the case studies. But the idea is that you're away from your day-to-day work, you can share experiences and views, and you can think about the things that lay behind being a professional person in your work and your outputs, which includes considering what your responsibilities are to all the people you deal with, your employer, the clients, and the wider public and the profession. Professionalism is always regarded as a key component of actuarial education. It's not something which is usually covered within the university programs, and even in the actuarial associations that have exam programs, the professionalism is usually a separate element after you've done the exams. But it's very much at the center of thinking in the profession that you should learn about professionalism as well as gaining all the technical skills. And it's important, if you're going to be a great actuary in the future, that you devote time to learning about professionalism and you develop a professional attitude and way of thinking. It's a bit different from the technical studies in that there's generally no simple black and white answers to the questions that are posed. They're matters which should be discussed and thought about in relation to the ethical and professional background. I think of it as being what lays the foundation for doing not just a good job, but a good professional job, one which will be respected by the people who we serve in our clients and our companies and in the wider public. Oh, just briefly, a background. What is a profession? In these slides, we're going to talk about what is expected of us, what the world outside thinks they should get from people who describe themselves as professional. We'll talk a bit about things that we need to comply with, how we serve the profession, what issues are there to be debated, and how corporate governance works in relation to a professional person. So if we had more time, I would lead a discussion on what the key characteristics of a profession are, but here are 6 which are generally put forward as being the most important elements making up a profession. The members have a specialized skill which they exercise through joining together in not exactly a club, but through an organizational structure which enables them to be to deliver that specialized skill to serve the public. The skill has been developed through education. Education is fundamental to acquire the necessary skills, but then it goes beyond education because the members of a profession have a special relationship with the people that they are serving. We've sometimes used the word fiduciary, which means a relationship of trust, because those who are served by actuaries expect of them that they will offer a particularly strong and highly regarded service. Also, a profession is generally publicly recognized and has a recognition by others as being the authority in that particular field of expertise. Professions operate through their local and national bodies to enforce standards of competence and conduct to make sure everybody who calls themselves an actuary has the appropriate competence to do the work they're doing. And then a further and very key element of being a profession is integrity. We'll come back to integrity in a few cases going forward. This is a summary of a longer discussion which just shows how the professionalism is founded on a core of ethical values. The ethical values are in the central oval there: respect, responsibility, openness, fairness, integrity, transparency, honesty, and trust. And those are all things which you could describe as ethical values. They exist outside professions as well as inside professions. People spend lots of time studying ethics, and it's fundamental to what a profession is all about. But a profession also has other values, and they're particularly these things around the outside of the diagram here. Customer client focus. That's something which is very much a professional value rather than particularly an ethical value as such. Ability to exercise foresight, looking ahead, quality, the bringing into the consideration all the important elements which directly affect your ability to work. Reliability, you can be trusted. And teamwork, and that takes us into another area over here, which is really about the values which are typically associated with business, profitability, efficiency, performance, but also to be a good professional, you would expect to be familiar with those and exercising them in your work. So that's just a summary in bullet point form of the ethical values which are important within the profession. And it brings out one or two there which are not in that previous summary slide, things like avoiding misleading communication. So communication has got to really be to purpose and to achieve the desired effect of communicating what you want to communicate to your listeners. Respect and support for others is another area where actuaries, along with other professionals, lay great emphasis that we are not just working as individuals, but we are working with other people and need to respect them and their contribution. Avoidance of conflicts of interest, we'll talk a bit more about later. And speaking up, the willingness to see where things are not as they should be in an organization or a situation in which you find yourself, and being ready to speak up about that. Now, ethics is much wider, of course. We don't have the time to go into all of those things which might be thought of as ethical issues here, just a few of them, some of them which particularly might impinge on what actuaries do. We'll see in the workplace, like unethical marketing, gender discrimination, fraud, and in the current environment, we think a lot about our concern for climate and the environment. And professionalism goes beyond just ethics, as I already mentioned, fiduciary relationship. I would also emphasize the need for objectivity in what actuaries do. So as an actuary, you're regarded not just as in the pocket of the person who asks you to do a job, but you are able to exercise impartiality and show objectivity in your thinking in order to ensure that the product that you generate with your work is particularly valuable to the recipient because of its strong objectivity. I mentioned about doing a good job, so that's all about quality of services. Something which we should always have at the back of their minds is the need to ensure that we generate work which is really needed, which serves our clients well, or our employer when we're employed actuaries, and which ensures that we are not just looking at the narrow problem that faces us as a sort of mathematical exercise or modeling exercise, but we're thinking how what we talk about and what we advise on and what we report on is going to affect the people of those who are affected by it, the policyholders or the members of Social Security or pension funds. We are looking through to see, well, what are the interests of the people who are going to be affected by our advice, and how can we ensure that they are that interests of those people is properly taken into account. We also look at within professionalism as our ability to be really tight on things like quality of work and quality of documentation, making sure that we have an audit trail. We're not auditors, but we have that same principle that there should be the possibility of those who come after us or try to understand our work being able to follow through exactly what we have done, and hence the concept of an audit trail, but also the need to ensure that our work is thoroughly checked and reviewed by other people, so that we don't go out on a limb just making predictions and calculations on our own, but we have proper peer review and backup of other people checking what we've done. Some wider issues here: lifelong learning, that's the commitment to continuing development in our profession, which might include not just professionalism, but also all the technical skills that we need to keep refreshed and up to date. Appearance, sort of a little bit peripheral to the centrality of these other rather big issues, but the way in which we present ourselves when we go to work or go to visit a client is also important in demonstrating that we respect them and that we are able to give ourselves a good position in the way in which we come across to other people. And then lastly, on this side, assisting the profession to serve the public interest. Now, serving the public interest is central to a lot of actuarial associations' mission statements. We'll see it with the IEA mission statement in a few slides on. And we as individuals don't directly serve the public interest with most of the work we do because we're serving a client or we're serving an employer. But we, as members of a profession, are there to help the profession to be there for others and to serve the public interest. So when you look at what those outside the profession will expect of us, these are some of the key things that will be on the agenda. Demonstrating and applying appropriately specialist skills. So they look to actuaries to provide actuarial content, actuarial advice. They expect us to be reliable and up to date with our technical knowledge. They expect us to behave ethically with moral values and honesty, to comply with the profession's code of conduct and standards, and we'll talk about that more as we go on in this course. Where we have statutory roles, such as the actuary to a company, or the actuary to a pension fund, or the actuary to a social security scheme, then the statutory role has been given to the actuarial profession in the expectation that actuaries will exercise a really high level of integrity in what they do and provide that service to a high standard. Exercising judgment. Most of what we do as actuaries requires judgment. It's not just mechanical. And the exercise of judgment comes with a moral responsibility, not just a technical responsibility, and hence the recurrence of the word integrity, which is effectively the practice of being honest and showing a consistent and uncompromising adherence to the truth and to ethical principles. And lastly, which we've touched on already, that we as professional people are not just narrowly focused on the interests of our client, but we also want to draw the attention of our client to how what we're advising on will affect other people, a broader spectrum of issues. We have a relationship of particular trust with our clients. I think this is particularly evident when you're talking about consulting actuaries, but it's also relevant because even if you're an employed actuary, you still have a relationship of trust with your senior management and your board because they are relying on you to perform an actuarial professional role, and that's a relationship of trust just like exists with a consulting actuary talking to a client. Confidentiality is part of the relationship of trust, and whenever we are given understanding of data and information from a client or from our employer, we need to be appropriately confidential about how we keep that information to ourselves. And then communication, which I mentioned on an earlier slide. I think the communicating skills of actuaries are often thrown into some question because actuaries tend to be basically very technical people. They have extremely strong technical and mathematical skills, but they don't always have strong communication skills. But that in order to be effective as an actuary and to deliver the advice that you are trying to deliver to your client, to your employer, communication in the right way is fundamental and really part of the skill set of being an actuary. And the two last ones there are our broader skills applied to serving the profession in relation to the public interest, which we've mentioned, and contributing to the development and work of the profession. So here's a little diagram which has been put together to sort of show how all of these different elements of professionalism impinge on the central objective of a profession, which is to serve the public interest. A very short history of the actuarial profession. The word comes from a Roman origin. Actuarius was a person in ancient Rome who actually was the administrator and secretary of the Senate, the Parliament of ancient Rome, and actuaries were responsible for documentation and for agenda setting and for ensuring that decisions were fulfilled and put into effect. So that's a fairly long way away, both in terms of time and distance from what actuaries do today. And the real concept of the actuary came into the modern world through the company in the UK called the Society of Equitable Assurances, the Equitable, who appointed in 1762 somebody who would do all their mathematics for them and would decide on how best to distribute monies to policyholders and ensure adequate reserving levels. And the people who were running that company had a strong background in classics and thought up this world actuary from that classical background. First person to be named the actuary of the company was in 1775, a chap called William Morgan. By the 19th century, we also had legislation requiring actuaries in the UK, and then other countries followed suit. First actuarial association was the Institute of Actuaries in 1848, but by the end of the 19th century, there was an international actuarial association. We've more recently had an actuarial association for Europe, but the IAA, of which the Lebanese Association is a member, has become a very important international body which reflects the concept of professionalism in its activities and welcomes all associations from all countries who subscribe to the basic roles of what an actuarial professional body can do. These are perhaps the main ones: education, quality control, research and development of the actuarial role, professional guidance, discipline, and the reputation of the profession with outside organizations, including government and regulators. The International Actuarial Association is an association of associations. It has a focus on professionalism, and there's a requirement for all those who seek to join the IAA that they should have a definition of professionalism within their scope, that they should be committed to high quality, that they should have an educational requirement, which may be delegated to universities. So not all associations of actuaries have their own education system, but they rely on the education provided by other associations or by universities. And then the IAA is very active in developing the role of the professional globally and interactions with other bodies, such as the International Association of Insurance Supervisors or the International Accounting Standards Board. So these are the requirements to become a member of the IAA, which the Lebanese Association met. It requires a code of conduct, and requires a disciplinary scheme, an educational requirement, and payment of dues to the IAA. Well, just to wrap up that element, this is the vision statement of the IAA, that the actuarial profession is recognized worldwide as a major player in the decision-making process within the financial services industry, in the area of social protection, and in the management of risk, contributing to the well-being of society as a whole. And I've mentioned a few times already the idea of serving the public, and that's within the vision statement of the IAA, because we are major players in these particular areas: financial services, including insurance and banking; social protection includes pensions and social security and healthcare; management of risk is very broad, but has been particularly in the area of financial risk, but also now in areas like climate risk; but always with the intention that the role of actuaries should be contributing to the well-being of society. So there's a few background considerations to what it means to be a profession. And these are a couple of strap lines which different associations have used in recent years. The Actuaries Make Financial Sense of the Future was a strap line adopted by the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries when they reached their 150th anniversary. And the other one about turn risk into opportunity is a strapline from the Society of Actuaries in North America, which some of you will be familiar. And in very small letters there, which is another strapline from the Society of Actuaries, actuaries, the best kept secret in business. Not sure that we want to be secret, but the fact of the matter is that actuaries are not particularly well known in the world at large, only by those who are dealing with the sort of issues that actuaries get to deal with. But I think our objective is that we should be much better known and recognized for the important part that actuaries play in maintaining social and financial stability in a very wide range of organizations.